My name is Anna. I'm the Student Welfare Officer this year for the Undergraduate Students' Union. So it's great to have you guys on board and to hear your kind of reflections and advice and just your words of wisdom, really, for the students in college who are embarking on placement this year or who are going through it at the moment. And I'm just going to ask you a few questions and hopefully it'll help some students kind of manage their placement and their mental health and all that jazz. So thank you again for coming. I'd like for you to do introductions. So if everyone could just say their name, what they're up to now, what they studied, and just a kind of a general overview of what you're doing. That would be great. Thank you. I'll start with Veer, if that's okay.
Yeah, hi Anna, and thank you for having me here today. And I'd also like to thank Quiva and the rest of the alumni team as well. I graduated RCSI in 2012. I was in the class of in the medicine class, and after that I worked in a few places. So I worked in Singapore for about 2.5 years as a doctor, as a house officer, and then a medical officer. Gained some experience, traveled around Southeast Asia for about 6 months. After that, and then I moved to New York, working for a research project for the United Nations for about a year and a half. After which I sat some exams and then ended up joining general practice training in London. So I'm joining my final year of training now, and hope to graduate next year into 2021 as a qualified GP in London. And I deal with a lot of mental health cases as well. I have a keen interest in mental health and CBT, and so that's why this talk is very, very close to me, and I can associate with helping people with mental health, especially students and young sort of teenage students, as well as medical college and physio and pharmacy students.
Great. That's some whirlwind experience traveling and then the UN and everything. That's very cool. I'm looking forward to hearing more. Thank you, Veer. I'm going to go on to Sarah now. If you want to give a quick intro. Thank you.
Hi. I suppose not quite as much as Veer has experience-wise. I am physiotherapy class of 2020, so graduating officially next month. But I'm currently working full-time in a private practice in Dublin. So my caseload is mostly musculoskeletal related at the minute. And then I also work with an AIL rugby team. So AIL is like the highest amateur division, so they're quite competitive, I suppose. And they've appointed me the role of head physio, but it's because I'm the only physio. So I work with them 2 days a week. And yeah, I suppose during my time in RCSI, I was quite passionate about mental health. I was on the SU myself, so I think this is a great initiative and happy to share any advice I can.
Brilliant. That's very cool. Thank you. And then Fajer, last but not least.
Hi everyone. I graduated from RCSI from pharmacy school in 2019. After that, I did a research master in RCSI as well, and I finished on 2018. I then went back to my country, Kuwait. I worked as a pharmacist there. And just recently, I moved here to UAE, and I'm doing some exams in order to work here as a pharmacist.
Everyone's happy. We're just going to move on and talk about placement and kind of your experience with placement throughout your college experience. So my first question for all of you actually is, what placement did you do and how did it come about in the year? Was it like throughout the whole year? Was it kind of one semester? And just kind of a general overview of your placements. That would be great to give the students more kind of detail about that.
So I guess by placements you mean the different sort of rotations that we did in med school. So for the first 2 years we were obviously in the campus, and we were in the old building, which you guys probably don't use now because you have a fancy new building, which we used to see being built and sort of think about when we're going to get to use that, but we never did. But you guys have a fantastic facilities in there, and it's just so nice to see. But we used to have our lectures in O'Flanagan and Cheney and Houston and all the theaters in the old building. And then after the 2 years, then we went to Beaumont Hospital where we did our clinical placements. And then we were sent all across the country to different cities to sort of get experience with different hospitals. So I remember I went to some of the placements that I remember clearly was one that I did in general practice in Cork. And that was a really interesting placement because I was in the Salvation Army building in Merchant Quay in Cork. And the GP that I was under was actually treating patients that were of sort of, less privileged society and, people that were on the streets, a lot of the homeless people and a lot of the drug addicts. And so it was a really interesting rotation to see because all well that you can do general practice in a community where everyone is well off, but to do general practice in a community where people are not well off, and you see the kind of stuff that you don't get to see in other placements. So that was a very good placement. It was an eye opener for me, and I think it attracted me towards general practice a lot more. The two other rotations that I remember clearly, one was Cavan, which was interesting because it was Cavan. And I was in, no offense to anyone from Cavan, but I went there for the first time. I was doing surgery rotation there. And it was, we were in a very cute bed and breakfast that was given to us to stay there for the week. And the lady there was so nice. She used to make us breakfast in the morning. We used to go for the rotation, come back. And then everything used to shut off by 6 p.m. So the whole city was like completely empty after that. So that was interesting because I remember one night when I was trying to get food in the middle of the night and I couldn't find anything except one kebab shop. And I just have that distinct memory of ordering some food that night. And I was so happy that I just found something to eat in the middle of the night. But that was a really interesting rotation. And one of the last ones that I remember that was really interesting was my psychiatry rotation in St. Ita's. St. Ita's was a mental asylum outside of Dublin. And it was probably the last year that mental asylum was open. It was open for 100 years. And 2012, it shut down because the government shut down all the asylums. And our rotation was actually in the asylum. So we went outside the city. It was about an hour outside Dublin. And we would go outside and we would, it was this really old, archaic Victorian building, which was basically an asylum with patients in there. Very sort of old concept of having mental health patients in there. And rightly so, it was shut down in that year. But it was a very, very interesting experience to see that. Kind of like Shutter Island, if you ever saw that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. It was very similar. It was very similar.
Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio was one of the inpatients.
Well, no, not really, but but the sort of the area and the building and the campus of that asylum was very similar to what they show in the movie.
Some very niche experiences that you got as a student. That's a good overview.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was just thinking before this started, what rotations really stand out for me, and those I think those three were the three rotations that stood out.
That sounds great. Thank you for sharing the info. And Sarah, what about you?
So I had to write these down because, like Veer, I was like, what did I do? So in physio, it works that you go on your first rotation at the end of second year, so it's quite an early introduction. And for that one, I was in Beaumont, and it's more kind of observation than anything, just to get used to it in the hospital. And then from third year, we work on cycles, so it's 5 week blocks. So you do 5 weeks a rotation, 5 weeks lecture, 5 week rotation, and on like that until you graduate. So I was also sent all over the country. I did geriatric or care of the elderly 5 week block in Waterford. I did 5 weeks acute surgical and respiratory in Tralee. I did 5 weeks MSK outpatients in Beaumont. And then final year, I was back in Waterford for primary care, which is essentially outpatient musculoskeletal care. Then I was in Cork for a geriatric neuro block, and then I was in Temple Street for an outpatient musculoskeletal and orthopedic inpatient. And yeah, I suppose like that, just traveled everywhere and got a very broad experience. A little bit different as a physio than a med student, or a pharmacist in terms of you work a standard day and you're under one physio. So you're in from like 8:30 to 4:30 or 9 to 5 or whatever their day is. And you take your own caseload from third year. You are supervised, but like you do have patients who you're responsible for and you write notes in the chart and stuff. So it's a little bit different. But yeah, we'll chat more about that, I assume. But that was my overall where I've been.
Yeah, sounds good. I think with OCSI it's quite unique in that you're kind of sent everywhere. Like you're not just all in one Dublin hospital. You're kind of like, just in like the back end of Kerry and you're like, oh, look, this is interesting.
Really was an interesting one, yeah.
Cool, thank you, Sarah. Fajer, do you want to give a quick overview about your placements and like where they were and how long they were?
Yeah, so as a pharmacy student, we don't have much of place to do in the old program that I did. I know in my final year, I did 1 month in pharmacy, and that is it was very different from Ireland. But I still remember the first day, we moved. I went there with one of my classmates, Sarah Kate, and we went with all excitement that we were going to the States, and all what we were thinking is we're just gonna go there, we're gonna enjoy. But when we went there, it was there's no transportation and no taxis. We went in Johnson City. I think maybe the city that we went in, that no taxis, no bus, no public transportation. So even if you go to a supermarket or something, it was very like we tried to like went with the strangers from the college that want to even go in to get some water or something. So it was a bit tough. But it was really nice.
I have another question about the placements and the rotations. Before you started them and you were kind of maybe just doing theory and lectures, did you have any kind of family or friends or classmates that helped you prepare for the placements or the rotations, who gave you advice before you started to say, don't do this or don't do that? Or do you just not really remember that? Or do you have any kind of, I don't know, advice that was given to you beforehand or like that?
So one of the things with RCSI was that everybody, not the Irish students, of course, but everybody that came from outside, uh, really didn't have much family in Ireland. I don't think anybody that I know that came from different countries had any family in Ireland. So it was always, you're always dependent on your colleagues and your fellow students to sort of give you that boost and give you that information. And I think some of the the students in the years that were above us always used to talk to us about this stuff and used to tell us what's good, who's good, who's the guy who's going to help you in the hospitals, who's the guy that you can rotate with, which professor. I knew about Prof Hill like 3 years before I even met him because that reputation follows him. That he's a very good professor of surgery, but he's a hard task master. So it was just that you find out about these things from the people that you study with, and obviously that helped a lot because you don't go blind into something and you can get some knowledge and information. But also it was very good for support because say if you're struggling in a particular rotation and people that have already done it and have sort of gone through that same process, then it's very easy to talk to them and get that information and get that help. And I think certain students certain students from certain countries had a more closer knit group. So I remember the Malaysians always had a very close knit group and they were always getting information from each other. Students from like Kuwait, UAE, and different Arab countries also had that sort of close knit relationship with each other and very, very supportive of each other. So I thought that was really good as undergrad students to have that.
Cool, great. Thank you. And Sarah, did you have anything similar like that?
Yeah, I suppose like very, very similarly, one of like the big advantages for me in the School of Physio and RCSI is the fact it's so small. So like it averages at 30 students in a class. So yeah, it was the exact same. I don't have any family members who work in the medical field, so it's like purely peer support. And my biggest piece of advice would be exactly like that, just to chat to someone in the yearbook who's been to the site that you're going to. And like they're going to be better than any like handbook or anything to guide you in terms of like what you need. And even things like transport, like to and from the hospital, things like that are things you want to think about before you get there. You don't want that to like add to your stress, you know. And then yeah, a pre-reading list. And I think sometimes you get kind of too caught up in the pre-reading list. Focus on like the big common condition. Like I'd be going into placements with like the rarest of conditions studied. Like focus on the main big conditions, I suppose. And yeah, that would be my main advice. Just chat to students who've been there and focus on the big common seen conditions. And yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah. What about Fajer?
Yeah, in pharmacy, our class is unlike medicine class is a smaller class, and then I remember we're only 2 girls from Kuwait, and then the rest are all from Ireland, and then few, I think, one from Iraq. So we were minorities, and then so we had to make friends with the Irish student and then the other student, because we don't know anyone in all their classes, so we won't have past papers or any like information about what we have to know or what we have to do for placement or anything. So we had to get along and make friends with different, because for us it was a bit hard at the start. Actually, we have the language barrier, and then even I would say a bit of a culture shock at the start because we, like, even if you want to talk with someone, you don't know if they will accept you or not. So it was a bit challenging, but then when we get along with them, it was very easy. We got to exchange information, and then it was easier for us to communicate with the rest of the class. It just, I would advise anyone to just make friends with as much people as they can in the class.
Yeah, I like that advice. Just like talk to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a great message to send to students, be it about placement or just in general. It's good to make.
Because I noticed that everyone in the class, they want to talk to each other, but everyone is just holding themselves back. They don't know if I say hi, will they like, do they want to talk to me or not? So just be approachable, and then they will just talk to you.
Yeah, I agree. I think we probably all agree with that as well. Cool, thank you. I have a question about reality versus expectation. So before you started your rotations and your placements, did it match what you expected? Did you expect something different, something worse, something better, or do you even know?
I think it depended on each placement. Some placements you were expecting a lot more than what you got, but some placements you got more than what you expected. So it really depends. I remember the Temple Street placement that I did with pediatrics was really good. It was a really good hospital. It's the only major children's hospital in Dublin, and I learned a lot being there. Even the obstetric and gynae rotation in Rotunda Hospital was very good. Prof Malone and the entire team was excellent over there. Learned a lot in obstetrics, delivering babies and all the obstetric care that goes into it. That was a real eye opener. When you're delivering babies as a 22-year-old medical student, I think it just I remember people being really excited about that, and posting all over Facebook and sort of talking about that, because that was a real sort of hands-on clinical experience that you can get. And then some of the other rotations, like the GP one that I mentioned that I did in Cork was very good. The psychiatric rotation was excellent. I think the surgery ones in general were, from my experience, were not up to my expectations. I think it's quite hard to get a good surgical placement because you're a medical student, you're scrubbing in, you're kind of in the background, you're not really doing much in terms of surgery. The one time I remember doing something was holding a retractor for about 5 hours when there was a breast surgery going on in Beaumont Hospital, and I was just like, I was hungry, I wanted to go and go to the toilet, and I couldn't do any of that. And that's when I kind of decided I'm not doing surgery, because I was just standing there, literally holding that retractor. And I was really afraid to let go. But some of the surgical rotations I think could have been more hands-on, but but in the end, it really depends on who your sort of professor is and who your teachers are. Anatomy in RCSI was really, really good. We still talk about this. I think anatomy, the experience that you get in anatomy in the first 2 years in RCSI with the dissections and everything is just fantastic. The anatomy lab that we have, the dissection lab, is really, really good. And I think it's the best I've seen in a lot of the other institutions that I've been in as well.
Sarah, reality versus expectation.
I suppose, yeah, very similarly, kind of dependent on the site and your senior. So you're like appointed a physio to be under, and I suppose if they were someone who loved teaching and like they were very passionate about it, that really came across, and like they tried to get you lots of. It was about kind of putting yourself out there as well. And I suppose for the first couple, I remember the night before my very first placement, my first real placement, I was petrified, like absolutely terrified. I thought I was going to walk in on the Monday morning and they were going to hand me loads of medical charts and be like, these are your patients, go see them. And obviously that's not the case for the first couple. It's like so I suppose expectation that I had to know everything, and reality is that you're a third year student. You don't know everything. I still don't know everything. So that was a big one. And then just, yeah, I suppose expectation was kind of that it'd be very like XYZ, and reality is that like you won't get to do things unless you ask. So like I asked, could I go watch some orthopedic surgeries? I asked, could I go watch a general surgery? And it's never an issue. Like if they can facilitate it, it's 100% facilitated. But just asking to do those things, otherwise you won't get to go and do them. And then expectation, probably that it wasn't going to be such an intense workload, and reality is that it is essentially a full time, like you see patients, you write their notes, you go home, you study and prepare for patients the next day. So yeah, probably an increased workload in comparison to what I had expected, but like very manageable once you get to grips with it.
Yeah, cool, thank you. Fajer, did you have a similar experience with expectation versus reality?
Yeah, I suppose it's the same. The only thing that when you ask someone, or when you go into something, you have a lot of expectation, and then you don't meet this expectation, then sometimes you will be stressed, even if it's not something, if you're not affecting you personally, it's just like expectation, not saying what you're doing, but still you're gonna be stressed. Why, like, I didn't get this, why that it's less than what I have to do, or less what everyone else is doing, or what everyone else have done. So what I advised the other students before is that know what you will get or what you will see there, but don't go into any rotation or in any class or in any exam with any expectation, because then you're gonna put yourself into a lot of stress. Just go and then experience everything without any expectation. For me, I found that was better for me, because every time if you think of anything, that if you go into something, even if it's easy, and then you went into there, you thought it would be very hard, if it's an exam or rotation or like presentation or anything, and then you went in there very prepared because you thought everyone else said it's hard, then you're not gonna do good, because you'd be stressed that it was hard, but in reality it was really easy.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's good advice to try and even just lower your expectations rather than to have none, because then you don't leave yourself being disappointed by certain grades or certain experiences. So that's definitely good advice for students. Following up on that, what do you think was the most challenging part of your rotations or your placement? Not to put you on the spot, but what was your biggest challenge, do you think?
There was, for me, there were a few. The most of my rotations were outside Dublin. I traveled a lot because of that. So we used to leave Friday night, take the train to whichever city, actually, sorry, Sunday night, take the train to whichever city we're going to, and then stay there for the week in a bed and breakfast or in a hotel or wherever the college puts us, and then come back on Friday night. That itself is quite challenging because you're living off a suitcase for about 6 months, literally, or 3 months, whichever, however the rotation was planned. And it can be difficult because you're leaving all your sort of your support network behind in Dublin. You're leaving your apartment, you're leaving your friends, your roommates, everyone, and then you go into this place, and then you have a whole bunch of new challenges to face. So going to a new place every time for rotation, quite challenging. Living in a bed and breakfast off a suitcase, very challenging as well. And also sort of managing food and your daily routine, everything just gets messed up. So that was probably the first challenge. The second one was trying to maintain as much as you can your learning. So as Sarah said, you have to be out there, you have to be asking people to get that experience. You won't be given it for granted. It's a busy hospital. Nobody has time for you. You have to sort of go in there and say, look, I'm a medical student, or I'm a physio student, or pharmacy student. I'm really interested in this and I want to learn as much as I can. And so just attach yourself to an SHO or a registrar or an intern and just follow them around. Do as much as you can. But then also coming home and then sort of preparing for the next day, or reading the stuff that you couldn't understand on the day. Because a lot of the times these doctors would ask us questions and be like, okay, so what do you think of this? And you'd be standing there going, I don't know. And so the idea is that, okay, we're not trying to patronize you. We're trying to get you to go home and read about that. So that's also a challenge to maintain knowledge during that rotation. And then, of course, studying for exams, trying to be in touch with your friends and family. It can be quite difficult, and especially if you're dealing with something like we're dealing with now with the pandemic, I think it can be quite a challenge. And you really have to be mentally strong and prepared to go through that entire process.
Yeah, it's like a huge balancing act, isn't it? Like trying to get the stress of exams and then also trying to keep in touch with your friends and then also to try and like perform well in your placement. So it's like this huge sort of trying to make a balance, I think, out of everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the peripheral aspect in itself is a challenge because, as Veer said, you're gone for 6 days a week. Like you leave on a Friday or you leave on a Sunday, you come back on a Friday, and that's huge. And it does really change your routine. And I think it's really easy to let your whole routine slip, like in terms of even food. Like if you're in a hotel, like you end up eating like cereal for dinner, and I don't think that that's ideal. And then I suppose my third year, I was on my 5 week blocks of rotations. I had a part-time job on Saturdays, and I was the SU president at the time. So that was quite an intense year for me. And it was so important for me then to have like these really strict routines because I noticed like I wouldn't contact my friends for weeks on end. Like it was like I just disappeared, and it was because I was in Waterford and I was trying to balance so much. But those things are so important to maintain. Particularly, I know as Irish students, we're fortunate in that you have other support networks outside of RCSI when you're in college. And so I suppose maintaining those friendships was a challenge, and it was easy to just kind of disappear and just go into your own bubble. But I think that looking back, that was actually really important to me. And even the part-time job, like it was almost an escapism from college and like this RCSI bubble in terms of like I was working with people who knew nothing about like medicine, physio, pharmacy, and would just talk like absolute nonsense. But it was actually really nice to just talk absolute nonsense for like 8-9 hours a day. So that was nice.
That sounds great. Where were you working?
In a coffee shop out in Hove. It was good. A coffee and
Nice.
pancakes are so very different.
Yeah,
Like,
that's nice. Like, a bit of variety is nice as well. Like you're not just
yeah.
video all the time. Cool. And what about Fajer? What did you?
Yeah. I would say the challenge for me was that I had to live with someone new to me, and we have to share like food, the living room, and then we had to go because obviously we had only us in the rotation, only myself and her, and we enjoyed a lot, but it's still for me and for her it was hard at the start to, you know, get along with each other, and then especially if we're from two different cultures, and then we both want to do something because we are alone. Like you don't want to feel homesick, or you don't want to feel stressed or something. And then we had I found the food is a challenge, because if you don't have a kitchen, or if you don't have somewhere to cook your own food, or you don't have a restaurant that you're used to eat from them, especially in areas where like the food is limited, and then restaurants close very early, and then you come back from rotation late at like 7 sometimes, or 6, and then you want to eat something because you're hungry, but you're limited in choices. That was a challenge as well. And yeah, that mostly this was for me.
Thank you. There's loads of different challenges there. Thank you for sharing them. And kind of following up on that, and we touched on it slightly already, but for students going on placement and kind of reflecting on your own experience, what would you do to take care of your health, be it your physical or your mental health? Did you, during placement, bring your family? Did you go for walks? Did you binge watch your favorite TV show? Like, what did you get to do to try and help yourself wind down? And if you didn't get to do it, what would you suggest that students now do?
Yeah, I mean, a mixture of that, all of that, really. I think you have to maintain a schedule for yourself as much as you can. So things that you used to do regularly need to sort of go on. So exercise, I tell this to my patients now, that 45 minutes, 3 days a week of cardiovascular exercise can really change your entire thinking. The endorphins, the positive sort of energy that you get after that. So you can do that anywhere. I mean, even if you're in a placement in the middle of nowhere, you can go for a run. You can maybe go to a gym that allows you to take. A lot of my friends, a lot of my roommates actually had memberships where you could just go and pay for a day and just go to the gym nearest to you. So that really gets you, at least gets you away from what you're doing, and sort of constantly thinking about work and studying. You can go and sort of sweat it out and improve that thinking. Fajer mentioned food. Food was really big, because for me as well, like when I was on placement, to get the food that I wanted, or just what I wanted to eat, was really, really hard. And you're not cooking because you're in a different place, and sometimes the bed and breakfast don't have kitchens and things like that. Well, they do, but you can't really use them as much as you want to. But so it's difficult. Food was a real challenge, but again, there's simple things you can do. You can sort of cook for the week. One of my friends used to cook for the entire week and take it with her to the placement. So that's something that you can think about. Everyone has a fridge. You can put that in there and just eat whatever you want during the week. The hospitals have cafeterias. The bed and breakfast give you breakfast. So food needs to be managed a little bit, and it's very important for mental health to maintain your diet. Sleep, really important to have 8 hours of regular sleep, because it consolidates all your memories, everything that you've learned gets consolidated in your brain during that time. So if you're not getting enough sleep, you're not going to be learning as well as you should. And then things like social contact, like family, friends. Don't lose touch with them, because you need them in times when you're stressed. So keep in touch. Now it's so easy. You got FaceTime. You have Skype. I mean, we always had Skype, but things like FaceTime, WhatsApp calls with video. It's really, really easy now to do all this stuff. And of course, self-care, mindfulness, breathing. All these things can be done very easily no matter where you are. It's just about taking the time out to do them. And so no matter what placement you're in, if you can maintain these 4 or 5 things regularly, then I think it'll help a lot.
Yeah, definitely. It's just trying to reinforce that message with students to take some time out of the study to do these things, as you said.
And it's easy that I'm saying it now, but when I look back at my time, I don't think I did it as much as I should have. So in hindsight, probably that would have really helped. But also, one of the things is that you shouldn't, if you're going to a new place for a placement, go and explore that area. So when I was in Cork, I explored all. I went to the Blarney Stone. Like didn't like I was, it was an interesting experience. And then I went to Cove, which is a little village nearby. So I did a bit of traveling around that. When I was in Galway, did all the West Coast stuff. So it's always good to just travel a little bit, see the area that you're in. Don't be just stuck in your room and then go to the hospital, come back to the room, go to the hospital. Let's just, get to know the local cuisine, local bars, pubs, and mingle with the local crowd. I think that also helps.
Cool. Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm the exact same. And it was only when I was thinking back on like my standout incidents, or like the big challenges that I faced, in all of them I was like, exercise was always the first thing to go. And the same with exams. I'd always be like, I don't have half an hour, I don't have 45 minutes to go to the gym, which is an absolute lie because you usually spend half an hour scrolling on your phone in the evenings. And it was so much better spent, as Veer said, like increasing those endorphins would be a much better use of your 30 minutes. So definitely just forming a routine as best you can. And I do understand, as Veer said, it's easy to say this looking back. It seems harder in the moment when you're living in a hotel or in a B&B or and you're away from everything you know, but just trying to form routines and sticking to them. And I used to do that. Like if you're in a hotel, just ask them, can you put the food in a fridge? And they'll usually heat it in a microwave for you. So like at least that meant that you were eating like healthy-ish food, and you had it there for when you wanted it. And then just time management is so huge on placement. Even on the weekends, trying to manage your time so that you do get some time for you, that's not study related or placement related for whatever your hobbies may be. I think it's so important to keep them up. And I think so many people drop their hobbies or likes during college because it's the excuse of I don't have time. And those things are so beneficial, I think, especially to your mental health. I love Irish dancing and I was an Irish dancer up until a year ago, and I kept it going. And I just started training then on Friday nights to replace it, so I just come back for it. But like that, it was something I look forward to every week. So I think those things are important to have. And then the School of Physio, everyone talks about these family nights. So on Thursday night, we'd all get together and we'd go for like a nice dinner or a takeaway somewhere, like whoever was on the placement. So I think that was really nice because it was something to look forward to at the end of the week. You knew you were nearly there, you were nearly finished, and it was like a nice debrief to just chat about what had happened that week. And just being kind to yourself, like it's a hard road. It's a long degree. So just being kind to yourself, I think, is so important. And as Veer said, keeping in touch with your friends and family because you do need them. It's easy to let those connections slip, but they essentially will get you through, I think.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. I'm only starting second year. I'm like, it's so important to keep your friends and family close for break as well, not even just for support, like just to distract yourself even as well.
Yeah, get out of the orphan cycle is very important, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And what about you, Fajer? What do you think?
Yeah, same as what they said. And most important is to take care of yourself, your body, your sleep, the food you eat, and because obviously all this at the end they will contribute to your mental health. And then the people around you, the people that you're gonna spend time with, make sure that you're not surrounding yourself with any negativity, or pick the people that you're gonna enjoy your time with. When you start, if your studying partner is not that person that you want to spend one time with, then that's fine. Study with someone and then go out with another person, but just enjoy yourself. Because as said, it's a long journey, and then if you don't enjoy yourself along the way, you're not gonna like it. And then I remember also a few times like I kept studying for like a week or so because I was very tired. Like I didn't get any rest during the week because I thought that in med school we're not allowed, like you have to study all the time, because sometimes like you go in the library and like on Saturday or Sunday and then you see everyone in there, so you get a bit stressed that everyone is studying but you're not studying. But then you have to just keep in your mind that everyone have a different schedule. So maybe they're studying at this time where like you're having dinner or something, but and you're studying at a different time when they are like writing or something. So make sure that you enjoy yourself and then to take care of yourself. Also keep socializing with people in the college, people outside the college, people in like different, and if you're like from not from Ireland, then the people you have from home. Uh, Keep talking with your family. You need them obviously all the time. Whenever like if you're stressed, talk with someone. Let it out. Just don't keep it. I prefer personally to talk, and I know like talking usually like if you're like stressed about something when you talk about it, you would sometimes just after time you know like talking would let you forget what you're stressed about. So talk about what you're stressing about, and then talk with the student that in the same at the same stage at your people who are like facing the challenges you're facing. Yeah.
Great, yeah, that's some really good advice. Thank you. I suppose like we've kind of covered a lot and we've touched on sort of advice and challenges and different things like that. Is there anything else that you as a trio would like send a message out to students who are kind of struggling at the moment, maybe with placement during the pandemic or just in general? I know you've given quite a like good brief advice already, but is there anything just as like a take home that you'd like for students to do or to think about?
Well, I don't know what the status of like the college is at the moment in terms of, students getting together and the usual activities that we used to have during the year, the ballot sessions, the ball,
None of it.
the international night. None of that is going on. So I can imagine,
yeah.
yeah, I can imagine how tough it must be because those are also outlets for you to, you get involved with those kind of things. It can really make you feel a lot better because I remember like I participated in a lot of those things. I hosted ballot session, hosted international night, and it just gets you to meet so many different people. I met so many students during those events because you're doing it together. So I think that's very important, but I know it's not happening now, which is really sad for the students that are there at the moment. But I'm sure it will get started again. And when it does, then people should participate in those things as much as possible. All the societies, on the first day when we used to have that whole exam hall filled with like these sort of kiosks where you'd sign up for societies, and I signed up for like everything.
Yeah.
I signed up for like sailing club, and I remember like
Same.
what was it? I can't remember now, but it was this paintball like club, which took us into the forest, and we were doing like paintball competitions with each other. So many cool stuff that you can actually get involved with. Especially because you don't know people in Ireland. That's the best way to get to know everyone in your college and then meet more people after that. So when all that starts up again, I really encourage people to do that. But until then, just people need to just be a little bit more sort of thinking internally and trying to take some time out for themselves and just to get through this really rough period that everyone's going through. It's not just medical students or pharmacy or physio students, it's everyone, even the doctors that are on the front line. I mean, I have for the last 6 months, it's been nonstop for us. And it's just, you need time off for yourself. You're not able to travel, you're not able to go and see your families in different places in the world. So that's also very difficult. But it's just, we just need to collectively as the medical fraternity need to get through this part. Because we technically are. I mean, even the students that are going to be graduating this year are going to be on the front line pretty soon. So we are pretty much now part of this response. And I think that everyone needs to first take care of themselves before they can do anything for others. And also, I just want to say I'm always available for any of the students if they want to talk or have a chat. Stuart and Quiva and everyone have my emails, social media, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is. I just signed up for the RCSI mentorship program, so that's good because I'm always there for like students who need advice, whether it's studying or just mental health or just taking care of stuff. Yeah.
Sounds great. Thank you, Veer. Sarah, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I suppose first off, just probably something that we didn't touch on. don't be afraid to ask for help. Like I think everyone at some point during the degree will struggle. And it's definitely not something that you should be ashamed of. And as Fajer said, don't internalize it, because you can let things build up to and they become mountains in your mind. But RCSI has great services. Like the GP is free, and there's counselling there for people who would like that. It's also free. So I think don't be afraid to ask for help. And everyone has an academic mentor. So if you want to go through them, or if you're more comfortable going through yourself, Anna, or I think just don't let things build up for yourself. And there are so many services available, and you should definitely avail of them if it's something that you think would help you. And then secondly, yeah, to touch on what Veer said, to make as many connections as you can in the college within all the schools. Like some of my best friends were in medicine and pharmacy, like it wasn't just physio. And that does help with placements as well. Like if you know other people on your rotation, like if you spot a medical student that you know, and you can have a chat with them, and there's things that they can explain to you, and then there's things that sometimes we can explain to them. And I think that those connections are sometimes not valued, and they're really important to have those. Like, and you're essentially building towards what you're going to work in. Like we work as a multidisciplinary team, so it's just like getting that going early on, I suppose, is so important. Yeah, that would be my take home.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. And Fajer?
Yeah, so at the end, just through this pandemic, I know it's very hard for everyone. I have my cousin now, she's final year pharmacy student in Ireland. And then she used to have, like, this is one example, like she used to have her mom visiting her all the year, but now she can't because of um, uh, the virus and everything, so no visa. I know it's hard for especially international students, they can't have their family. I know a lot of students used to, like, their parents would visit them during exams to give them support or so, but now because of this situation it will be hard for them. So but just keep in your mind that this is because you're the future for the situation. You need to be strong and hard in order to help everyone else stand during the situation. Um, because I know the med class of 2020 who graduated without graduation ceremony, without anything it was, and then they had their exams, and like I think they got a notice 2 weeks before their exam, and then they did their final exam and in a different date, and then now I know, like, they're practicing everywhere in the world, some of them here in UAE, and other I know in Ireland. So if they did it, then you can do it as well. It would be hard. It's not as simple as we're like saying, or like it was before, but um, you can do it. We all do it. You can do it. And then if you need help, as what Sarah said, ask for help. And I know all the people in RCSI, everyone, including them, like the staff. I remember, like, I went to my academic tutor more than once. When I had, like, when I was stressed about the exam, when I thought like I'm studying wrong, or like when I had some issues, I would just go to them, and I would feel very good afterwards. So like I would encourage everyone to just, if they have issue, and then just go and then talk with someone that will learn.
Great. Thank you. That's
and also, you know, Anna, I just want to add, like,
yeah,
you guys, the SU, I was part of the SU when I was there in RCSI, and you know, you're the ones that can connect those students to people like us, who can also sort of share those experiences with them. And it's obviously the alumni team as well. So, you know, if you guys hear people struggling, or if you see that someone's struggling and they come to you, you know, don't just connect them with the people that can help. I'm as I said, I'm very open. I'm sure the others on this panel will also be open to help students anytime. Yeah.
yeah, it's so
Because
important.
we've been through it, and we know exactly what it's like. And
Yeah, you're the pros.
yeah, and it's even harder for you guys, actually, because of everything that's going on. So
Yeah.
I think you guys will be much tougher than us coming out. Because I totally agree with Fajer. I mean, my mom used to come and visit me during my exams. You know, it was a real help, because she was like, she would make food and stuff like that, and I'd just be like studying. So it really does help, but you can't do that now. A lot of families, you can't go visit your families, so it is tough.
Yeah, it's a hard time, especially for the newer students who are, you know, in Ireland for the first time, out of home for the first time. in college for the first time. They've got lots to kind of to deal with. So we're trying to provide as many supports that we can for them. Okay. Thank you so much for all your advice. Just to follow on what Sarah said, I'd like to just direct students to either myself, the welfare officer, or the student welfare office, which is the Compass office, and they're amazing. They're fully qualified social workers, and they're there for support, all confidential, non-judgmental support at any stage. So if anyone wants to reach out at any stage, please do. And as we said, the alumni here are more than welcome to give you contributions about your journey and your placement and everything like that as well. And I'd like to say thank you to the alumni team, the Caoimhe, Stuart and Laura. They've been brilliant. They basically organised this whole thing. I'm just standing in here. And to the SU team as well for helping me prep questions and stuff like that.